Good evening, I'm DK Rossner. Welcome back to the TTT News. Now, Africa as a continent has a long, complex history that remains all too veiled and obscure to many. International broadcaster and the chair of the Royal African Society, Zeinab Badawi, has gone to great lengths to peel back that curtain through the series, The History of Africa with Zeinab Badawi. We're very happy to have her join us at this point in time. So, welcome, Zeinab. Thank you for being a part of this. And I want to start off with the premise because you gave a TEDx talk, and I want you to explain how history can be used as a tool for change.
Well, hello everybody. Hi DK, great to be with all of you. History is a tool for change. Well, we're at an inflection point at the moment, triggered by all the conversations that we've had after the tragic killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And so as a result of that, I think that history can really be part of this change movement. And by that, I mean that people are searching for their identity. Excuse me. And they're also searching for control of their own narrative. And that's what history gives you. You can't jump on the train when the journey is almost completed. You've got to grab it right from the start, take history right back and say, we people of African descent have a wonderful history that we want to make sure that the whole world knows about it, including people of African descent themselves, because sadly, they're not taught enough about their own history, not only on the continent of Africa, but also in the Caribbean, South America, and the African diasporas in Europe. So a real mission for me to really be part of this change movement and say that people of African descent need to know they have a long and proud history of which they can be really, really glad and to really cherish.
And this makes me think of Sankofa in the sense that intentionally using history to educate one towards self-determination. Because yes, there's education, but how does that help you see yourself? How does that help you move in ways that are intentional? So actually using the history, because things that happened in the past aren't left there, but we take them forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, the past is still with us. When you look at, for instance, the largest and most influential African diaspora in the world, the African Americans, you can see how slavery there, the transatlantic slave trade, is not history. It's not just something that's consigned to the past. It informs the present. And, you know, people look at the history of African Americans and they look at the civil rights movement and so on, but you've got to strip it right back and go back to the transatlantic slave trade and see how the legacy of that has created an ideology in which the Black Africans are seen as inferior. And until you dismantle that ideology, you cannot really eradicate that kind of sense that some people, white people, think that Black people are in some ways inferior because they're the descendants of slaves. So you've got to really confront that history and not consign it to the past. You've also got to say, though, that your history doesn't begin with the transatlantic slave trade. Your history goes back centuries and centuries beyond that, because, of course, Africa has got the longest history in the world because it's where humankind began. You know, Africa is the greatest exporter par excellence. Everybody is an African export. And I can see there that you're showing some clips from the first episode, Mother Africa, of my series. And that actually is not only the history of the African people, because that program is looking at the origins of humankind. And I went there to that particular community who choose to live in the way that our ancestors did. And, you know, people may look at them and say, oh gosh, you know, they've got no cars, they've got no mobile phones. But, you know, the Hadzabe people choose to live that way because they want to be in tune with nature and so on. And there have been so many attempts to try to bring them into the modern era, but they've said, no, we don't want to live in apartments. You know, we want to live the way we have always lived.
But I appreciate the fact that you said having people or having Africans learn about themselves. as opposed to just saying, okay, well, this program, this series validates Africans or the work or the history to others, but basically holding up a mirror and saying, well, look at this. This is what you have done. This is where you come from. What do you think is the kind of role of the series in inspiring this an investigative kind of mindset among people?
Absolutely. Thank you. That for me is the most important aspect of this project. You know, I only skimmed the surface, 20 45-minute programs looking at Africa's history. Only 2 were on the transatlantic slave trade. I want to say to people in the Caribbean, in South America, in Europe, you are people of African descent like me. You have a proud, proud history. You know, we built civilizations. We were part of the global international economy. The richest person, period, in history was an African, Mansa Musa, who lived in the 13th century. By today's standards, he would be worth $435 billion. $435 billion. I repeated it because I want you to know that that's the sum, because he had so much gold, and you know, if whatever he did with the gold, the price globally would plummet or rise depending on how much largesse he wanted to distribute. That's one of the episodes, by the way, called Desert Empires. So, you know, you can often say to people of African descent, you know, whether you're in Trinidad, and say, name me some famous African kings and queens, and they might sit there scratching their heads. And you know, that's the case everywhere in Africa I went. They would say, you know what, Zeinab, we know more about British medieval kings than we do our own kings and queens, our own civilizations, because our history has been occluded, or it's been denigrated, or we've been told we don't have any, or it's been written by outsiders. And why this series is unique is because it is Africans themselves who are telling their own history. You know, they're not relying on outsiders to give their interpretation. They're saying, this is our history. So it's not only the telling, but it's the control of the narrative that's very important, because it puts Africans in the driving seat. And once you shift that mindset and invert the telescope, that infuses everything that we do today. It puts Africans in the driving seat, whether it's international trade negotiations, whether it's at the United Nations. It's, look, hang on, Africans can speak for themselves, be their own interpreters. And that is why, in a sense, this is not only a history program. I want it to kind of create a movement whereby Africans seize control of their own destiny and use the past to inform the present. And, you know, the other thing I want to say, and I'm sorry, it's a passion for me, an obsession, that I'm a Pan-Africanist. And I say everybody who is Black, who is of African descent, doesn't matter which part of the world you live in, you are part of this African family. And I want you to share in this story. And if you're in the Caribbean, you don't look at your history from when, you know, your ancestors were taken from the continent of Africa as enslaved people to the Caribbeans. I want you to go further back and to unite in this Pan-African vision and say, we are all part of the same history. Just as in Europe, you have people of Northern European descent saying, we think that what happened in ancient Rome or in ancient Greece is part of our culture and our heritage. It's the same thing for Africa. I don't want somebody to say I'm West African, I only relate to West African history. I'm from the central part of Africa, I only relate to that part of Africa. You know, Egypt's not my history. Egypt in Africa. Sudan, where I was born, is in Africa. You know, our history is all Africans' history.
And in speaking to that history, I really appreciate the fact that you're using people who are within and have insider knowledge to help create that knowledge and carry it forward. I remember Carolyn Cooper, Professor Carolyn Cooper from Jamaica. She gave a talk, and there was a very well-heeled English professor who came and said, I enjoyed your talk, but you got one thing wrong. Bob Marley in his song said, we flowered in this generation, because he didn't have that insider knowledge, knowing that forward is a word and there's a specific context for it. And if you're not able to get that nuance, there are things that you miss. But we continue the conversation when we come back. We're speaking with Zeinab Badawi. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We're very lucky to be speaking with international broadcaster Zeinab Badawi about the series, The History of Africa with Zeinab Badawi. Now, there's so much information, Zeinab. What goes into scheduling episode? There's so much info you discover and want to share. How do you decide, okay, this goes first, this goes second?
Yeah, thank you. Good question, DK. It is chronological. I started with the origins of humankind, and then I kind of worked my way. Look, I couldn't do every aspect of African history, obviously, in the television program, but I had three objectives to kind of, if you watch all the series, you will be much better informed about Africa's history than you were before. Secondly, you'll be excited and encouraged to go and find out more about the things that I told you about briefly. And hopefully also you'll be entertained or find it engaging, because I try to deliver the series with a bit of a light touch. And although it's called The History of Africa with Zeinab Badawi, the real stars are the people I spoke to, be they experts or whether they're just, part of the citizenry of that country, because it's very important to involve civil society in the narrative. And, just because Africa didn't write documents and so on, I had to also talk to people who had memory. History is memory. Heritage is memory, and so I would talk, for example, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with a woman who was in her late 90s, who would remember the rule of the Belgians in the Congo and remember what her parents and grandparents said. So these are primary sources that I spoke to. It's not me standing around pontificating, saying to you, this is what you should think about Ethiopia, this is what you should think about, Uganda and Kenya. No, it's the people of the countries, the regions themselves who interpret it for you. I'm merely an intercessor, a facilitator between the viewer and the people. And that's why this series is unique, because in the past we've had people who've gone to countries in Africa and told you how they see it and interpreted it and compared it to what was going on in Europe and so on. No, I just say, look, this is what's going on in Africa, told by the people themselves. And, I when you say to me, how did I choose? It was difficult. I went to 32 countries over 7 years, nearly 7 years. I mean, it was a huge project. There were some countries I couldn't go to that I would have liked to, but they weren't secure. There was conflict and so on. But I'm quite confident that on the whole, I chose the main episodes and of African history, and also try to give as best a regional representation as I could. And that's why you've got to see the whole series in order to appreciate that. People said to me, oh, you did the transatlantic slave trade. What about the Indian Ocean slave trade that involved the Arabs? And I say, well, look, you haven't watched the whole series. I did a program on that. So you've got to watch it on, in the round.
And we take the opportunity to remind you that you can see this on TTT. It shows on Sundays. We will give you the exact time at a later date. But you spoke about it a little bit, Zeinab. Is it intimidating? Because you said it's not you're not pontificating, but did you find it intimidating to attach your name to a series this important, this body of work that took so long to do?
Yeah, a very, very good question, DK. When I say I allowed people to do the talking, I really did study a great deal and I learned a lot. And in order to extract information from people, of course, I had to know the history myself. But history is contested, as we see now with people, your statue is not my statue and all the rest of it. So what was really good, and again, what makes this series unique, is the fact that I derived my facts mostly from UNESCO's General History of Africa, called the GHA. And the General History of Africa was an amazing project which was set up in the early 1960s by the newly independent leaders of Africa. Nyerere in Tanzania, and Nkrumah in Ghana, Jamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, Kenyatta in Kenya, you name it. They said, we've decolonized our countries, we want to decolonize our history. They went to UNESCO, they said, we'll pay for it. UNESCO said, we'll take the task on. So they scoured the continent of Africa for the best experts, be they archaeologists, paleontologists, historians, whatever, and they compiled volume after volume after volume of Africa's history. There are 10 volumes now. They take us right up until the 90s. And so I made my way through these volumes, not easy, and I derived my facts from there. So for example, in the later episodes, when I talk about colonialism, a lot of debate about, was colonialism really that bad for Africa? And I just say, look, this is what you should think about colonialism, because this is what the general history of Africa says. So nobody can really say, Zeinab, why did you say that? I disagree with you. I'm like, take it up with the UNESCO volumes, not me. So it was daunting, but I have very good cover in the fact that there's a UNESCO imprimatur on this series. And I just say, take it up with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, because I, got my inspiration and based my facts and interpretation on their volumes.
Now, you started off saying that you did your work, you did the research, you studied before going into these situations. I want to go even further back into your history, asking how does your academic background of politics, economics, and history influence the work that you did on this series?
Very good point. Again, thank you, DK, for that question. Yes, I studied in my first degree at Oxford, politics and economics and philosophy, but my master's degree was at the School of Oriental and African Studies at London University. And that was in history and anthropology. So I'm not by any means an academic. I've written no books and so on, although I do want to write children's books for 14-year-olds based on this series, because I've got so much material that I had to discard. So actually, that is my next project that I want to do. But I feel that my postgraduate studies in history and anthropology did help me make this series, because I understood history and historiography and so on and so forth, and the use of sources. But I also studied anthropology, and I have a very anthropological approach to the series. And by that I mean I don't relegate the people to kind of wallpaper, quietly going about their business. Wherever I go, I interact with communities. It's a history of the African people. The African people cannot be invisible. So wherever I go, I make sure I interact with ordinary people, and I ask them what they think about their history. So it's not just, academics, experts who are involved. And I think that that's how my own academic background has helped me, make this series.
Now, we have just over a minute more, but you previously described this as a unique and a legacy project. What kind of legacy do you want it to leave?
I want people of African descent to know about their history, to know that they have a wonderful history, to use it to embolden them, for them to use it to assert themselves on the social and political agendas of the diaspora communities in which they live. If they live on the continent of Africa, to use it to mobilize and to unite with their African brothers and sisters in other parts of the continent. I see it as a Pan-African legacy that really helps bring people together with this common history. But as I end the series, I end this conversation with you with the same thing. The main purpose of this series is, if you know yourself, then it is something which really feeds your spirit. The wonderful Kenyan environmentalist Wangari Maathai, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, said this, and I agree with her, and this is what my series is about. You cannot enslave a mind that knows itself, that understands itself, that values itself. And that's the legacy of this series.
And Zeinab, we want to thank you for putting in the work, for the work that you've done. Bless you and your efforts. And on behalf of the entire news team, I'm DK Rossa. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.